Welcome to Free Media. I'm Amber Duke.
And I'm Robby Soave. Well, Washington is buzzing over the Houthi group chat scandal. If you missed it, the Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, reported that he was accidentally added to a Signal thread by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, where top national security officials were discussing a then imminent U.S. attack on Houthi targets in Yemen earlier this month.
The White House has acknowledged the situation, saying it, quote, appears to be authentic, and that administration officials were reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain, that inadvertent number being Goldberg. President Trump has since defended Waltz on Tuesday, but here's his initial response to the news.
Your reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis?
Right.
Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time. Anybody else?
And here's Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's response.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign.
The news has unsurprisingly ignited hot takes from inside the Beltway, none other than Hillary Clinton responding on X, saying, "You've got to be kidding me." And here's how Fox News' Jesse Waters explained the situation to his audience.
Did you ever try to start a group text? You're adding people and you accidentally add the wrong person. All of a sudden, your Aunt Mary knows all your raunchy plans for the bachelor party. Well, that kind of happened today with the Trump administration. Mike Waltz was putting together a group chat on Signal, an encrypted app, with the Secretary of Defense, the VP, and a bunch of other national security officials to collaborate on whether to strike Iranian proxies in Yemen who keep firing missiles and shutting down shipping. Well, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz accidentally added a reporter to the group text, and not a good reporter. Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic, one of the biggest hoax artists around. Well, he heard some things he probably shouldn't have, but could have been a wee bit of a security breach. But it's not like they homebrewed a server and then bleached it or kept classified documents in their garages next to their Corvette. I'm sure it won't happen again.
But Democrats in Congress were big mad. Here's Georgia Senator John Ossoff confronting CIA Director John Ratcliffe during a Tuesday hearing after Ratcliffe and other White House officials claimed the leaked U.S. war plans for Yemen did not contain classified intelligence. Let's watch.
Director Ratcliffe, this was a huge mistake, correct?
No.
A national political...
Hold on.
No, you
Let me
hold
answer.
on. No, Director Ratcliffe, I asked you a yes or no question, and now you'll hold on. A national political reporter
you can characterize it how you want.
Was made privy to sensitive information about imminent military operations against a foreign terrorist organization.
Mistake of adding a reporter.
And that wasn't a huge mistake? That wasn't a huge mistake?
Well, I think they characterize it as
an embarrassment. This is utterly unprofessional. There's been no apology. There has been no recognition of the gravity of this error. And by the way, we will get the full transcript of this chain, and your testimony will be measured carefully against its content.
Okay, so this has been big news in the last 24 hours. It was clearly a mistake, even from the Republican or administration standpoint. Conservatives should be, and many are, angry that a liberal journalist who is very critical of Trump and the administration was in this chat mistakenly. I say mistakenly with some hesitance because I assume he was not added intentionally, and it was just like he had the same initials as the person that Mike Waltz wanted to add, although the number of people who have texted me to say, do you think this was actually on accident? Did they do it on purpose? Because I guess Mike Waltz is the more kind of establishment Republican figure on national security issues, and could it be designed to make someone look bad? I don't think that's what happened, but I have heard people express that. Anyway, it is not a good thing that it took place, and I think there should be some accountability there. It clearly was Mike Waltz's fault. What's your take?
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. This is obviously a huge blunder. I would use a different term for it if we weren't on camera, but yes, I mean, there's no really spinning your way out of this.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen narratives coming out of the White House, like from the vice president's office. They're using this to argue against the idea that J.D. Vance is at all divided from the president on foreign policy because he was pushing back against the idea of bombing the Houthis in the text thread.
I was actually glad to see that part of it.
I
You
know.
know I have been no major fan of J.D. Vance. He's not my favorite character in the Trump saga, because I think I have some differences between him, although maybe not on foreign policy so much. As came through in this discussion, I was happy to see him say, is bombing, this campaign of bombing against the Houthis, really America first? Is that us speaking to our supporters? Are they going to understand why we think this is important? Why do we think this is important? This is more involving European and Israel interests. And should we wait a month to do it if it's not so important? And then everyone kind of agreed that it wasn't so important to do it now, which to me speaks to the well, if it's not an imminent response to an attack on something, that with us being attacked, then I don't know why, again, this doesn't fall under congressional purview at all. We're just pretending that, the Constitution lets the president do whatever they want with respect to foreign policy, oh well. But I was glad to see him channeling that.
Yeah, I did appreciate that they were having an actual in-depth discussion about something of such great consequence. But the fact that the vice president's office was so quick to be like, hey guys, this doesn't mean that J.D. Vance disagrees with Trump, obviously cuts against the theory floated by some that this was some kind of 4D chess to embarrass Jeffrey Goldberg. I think they wouldn't have been panicking the way that they were with their public statements if that were the case. And then you saw a similar spin from people who were talking about how robust the foreign policy conversations were, and we can acknowledge that, while also saying that this was, again, a huge mistake.
To have them in front of
have never
Jeffrey
happened.
Goldberg.
Exactly. And I think one of the interesting questions coming out of this is, why did Mike Waltz have Jeffrey Goldberg's phone number? Has he been a source for him in the past? Have they been in communication? And both of them have seemingly denied it. Jeffrey Goldberg suggested in the Atlantic piece that he had never communicated with Mike Waltz before. And there was an unnamed source close to Mike Waltz who was quoted in Fox News on Tuesday morning saying that Mike Waltz had never leaked information to Jeffrey Goldberg before. And so I actually think this raises some important questions about Mike Waltz's relationship with the media. And I was very skeptical of him coming in. We might have even talked about it on this show when we were first talking about Trump's picks for national security. That Mike Waltz is a hawkish guy. He could be classified as a neoconservative based on your definition.
And so is Jeffrey Goldberg. Despite being
Exactly.
part of the anti-Trump Democratic liberal media resistance, whatever you want to call it, he's a very neoconservative foreign policy thinker, much more pro-intervention. And so I guess that would be the idea that he was included in there because then it was going to get out that J.D. Vance had been speaking again. Although, again, J.D. Vance, even in the thing, didn't say oh, I think the president's wrong about this. He was trying to explain to them why he thought they were not doing what President Trump had promised on foreign policy to the voters in a respectful way. And it should be, I hope it is I want it to be the case that you're allowed within the administration to disagree with Trump in at least in even just that way, and it's a good practice. I hope that's happening because there's a lot of people who might disagree on other there's former Democrats in the cabinet. There's Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. and so on. So I believe that good policy can come from different people discussing. I hope so. That's all fine to me. But yeah, somebody screwed up either accidentally or intentionally, but either way, it's a screw up.
Yeah, and I think if anyone were to be held accountable for this, it would be Mike Waltz.
Yeah.
But Trump has already said that he has learned his lesson and basically signaling that he's not going to fire Mike Waltz. And although
Who among us hasn't accidentally texted the wrong person?
yeah, except not with, information about people I'm planning on bombing. But, but I also, as much as I think that Mike Waltz probably should be fired, I also just loathe giving a scalp to the Atlantic of all people. And after 4 years of the Biden admin, where they got 13 American service members killed in the Afghanistan withdrawal. You had Lloyd Austin literally missing in action outside of the chain of command when he was Secretary of Defense. And then as much as Hillary wants to laugh about this, what she did was also ridiculously terrible in terms of her and Jake Sullivan communicating classified government information all over private servers. They just don't have any moral high ground here. And so I don't blame Trump for being like, no, F you guys, actually, he's going to stay. And I've given him a stern talking to, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah,
Now, if it does happen again.
I'm torn because my ultimate desire is for more government transparency, and they're saying like they did that illegally, and they're supposed to have all these conversations like in some secured room. I'm like, but I want to know what they're discussing. Like, this is a weighty foreign policy subject that I want to be
release it all.
I'm happy we actually got to hear about it.
Well, the other thing in regards to this is with John Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard testifying that there was no classified information in the chat. It kind of puts Jeffrey Goldberg between a rock and a hard place, because if he produces the supposed text from Pete Hegseth that included specific targets and weapons and dates and times and all of that, he could potentially be prosecuted or otherwise held accountable for leaking classified
if it is classified, but if they're saying it's not.
Right, so I wouldn't want to gamble with that and release that information.
Yeah, at the same time,
being targeted by the government.
At the same time, I saw some conservatives like Molly Hemingway saying, we can't trust Jeffrey Goldberg's characterization.
Which I think is reasonable, actually.
Well, sure. I mean, he released some of the text, and then he wasn't releasing the other ones because
text,
he thinks that would violate national security interests because it's classified. And I understand I understand it both ways. I understand not believing his characterization necessarily, but also he can't do that if he's going to be prosecuted for it.
And that's
so
why,
then it's
but
if they're saying it's not classified, it should just all be released.
Well, that's the thing, and you heard lawmakers pressing them. Well, will you commit to releasing it if it's not classified? And that would be really the only way for them to prove that that's accurate.
Yeah, I think they very much should do that to resolve that question. I think. Yes, they have created a situation where releasing it now in its entirety is the only correct way to proceed.
That would minimize the scandal significantly if that were indeed the case.
All right, we've got more to get to. Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in for more free media. That'll be released tomorrow. Thanks so much.